I had this amazing therapist. This had to have been 10 years ago. And, it's a journey. So I'm sure there was a lot of self-discovery and actualization and attempting to make sense of it all before that. But man, Ben, I remember this session. Her name was Jessica Horvat, and she is and was amazing here in Cleveland. And it's like making me tear up just remembering this moment. Um, and I had been going through a divorce, which was really, difficult, just emotionally difficult. And I was building the business and um, having a conversation about insecurity, just like this. And she said, I want you to go back to your earliest memory of an emotional low and go as far back as you can and tell me about it. And I told her the story about how when we had first come to this country, so I wasn't born, I think I shared this with you before. I wasn't born in the United States. I was born in Moldova, which was a former Soviet republic. And we came here in 1979. I was 4 years old. I didn't understand English for a few years. I was really insecure already because I couldn't talk to people. I thought everyone was making fun of me. I thought my parents were weird. And I was always wearing hand-me-down clothes because we didn't have any money. And I just really felt like I was sticking out like a sore thumb. This was from ages 4 through like 18, right? Uh, but my earliest memory of like a really deep kind of like hurt wound. I was 4 years old. I was at this Jewish camp, and I didn't speak any English, and I just remember this moment where I'm in the middle of a crowd of other kids, and there's the little girl next to me, and she's crying her eyes out, and there's this like counselor who couldn't have been more than 15 years old, and she's yelling at me. She's yelling at me. And I remember to this day what she was yelling, which I didn't understand what they meant at the time, was, did you did you do this on purpose or by accident? And so I must have done something. I don't know, pushed this other kid or whatever. But she was crying. And here's this like teenager who didn't know any better either. And she's like standing over me, yelling at me, pointing at me, and all of these kids are around me, like in this circle. I mean, and so anyway, so Jessica has me relive that moment. And to the T, I mean, like, what was the sunlight like? Where were you? Describe everything. And then she goes into how were you feeling in that moment? And I said, I was bawling. I was so scared. And um, and she goes, this conversation is like an hour long with Jessica, right? And it ends with me totally bawling, right? Like snot on my shirt bawling in Jessica's office, tears down my face. And she says to me, Alex, if that little kid, if 4-year-old Alex was here right now, what does he need to hear? And what do you need to do? And I'm like bawling, and I said, well, he needs a hug, and he needs to know that everything's going to be fine. And she says, tell him that. And so that's the beginning of this sort of self-awareness journey, or wherever I was on that journey. But that was a big aha moment. And then she had, over the next couple of months, Ben, she and I excavate a whole bunch of other moments in my life that were like that. From, moments with, where I had conflict with my dad, moments where I came to school one day and none of my friends wanted anything to do with me. for reasons that I didn't know then. And all the way up to like college, and went into, just lots of drinking and drug abuse and trying to fit in, and just this massive insecurity that had built up. And I'll never forget, she said this to me. She said, Alex, you have to understand that each one of those moments connects to another one of those moments. And I remember she said, she said, have you ever seen Inception? And I said, yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Have you seen it, Ben? You watched Inception?
Yeah, it's been a hot minute though.
Yeah. So Jessica said, all right, so that is all about implanting seeds of an idea into another person, into their subconscious, so that they dream a certain thing. And that is how your little t, not big T, well, big T traumas and little T traumas, that's what they do. It's somebody planting a seed in your heart, and that seed gets watered every time another one of those events happens, or whenever someone tells you you're stupid, or when someone doesn't reward you the way you want to be rewarded and make you feel the way you want to feel. And that seed gets watered and it turns into a plant, and then it turns into an oak tree. And it's always there. It's always there. And Carl Jung called that the shadow. And there's all this, um, there's all this truth to that I see in my life. Boy, Ben, that was a really long-winded answer to a very short question, but that is the best way I can answer that question.
Well, it's really interesting. I'm starting to like notice a theme that oftentimes ambition, drive are coming from somewhere. Now, granted, I think that I mean, it's proven that if you go look, there's actually some genetic, like there's entrepreneur's gene, but I truly think that often uh, we have the drive and ambition to make up for things that maybe we don't even actually know ourselves. And I think that the closer that we get to that understanding and the truth telling is the closer we get to actually to being like that Oscar Wilde quote. It's like you might as well be yourself because everyone else is taken.
Yes. I love that quote. Yeah.
And I'm really curious that that 4-year-old, you see some of these things on repeat, right? The seeds watered, it's continued cultivated. How did that get you as you went into entrepreneurial world? How'd that show up?
LA Law was on in the 80s when I was learning to speak English. Okay. And I would watch it, and I wanted to be the Corbin Burnson character, who was the divorce lawyer, not because he was a divorce lawyer, but because he drove like a sweet car and made these compelling arguments to juries, and everybody was hanging on every word of his. And he always had these beautiful women. I got older watching LA Law right into my teenage years, Ben. I watched that show religiously. It said, I want to be Corbin Burnson from LA Law. And I was getting a lot of positive reinforcement from people about just speaking. I sucked at math and science, but I did well in English and history. And so that carries into law school. It turns into a job doing business litigation for a couple of large law firms in Cleveland. And then I went in-house to be a general counsel for a telecom company. And I kept having as my clients other entrepreneurs at the law firms and at the company. And I just looked around. I was like, man, I can do this. I can be an entrepreneur. And so when I was in 2012, I went to the CEO of the company where I was general counsel, and I said, I am going to go start a law firm. It was there that I created what is now Cover My Six, which is this legal audit system. I did it for that company and I wanted to sell it because I thought it had a lot of potential. I didn't call it Cover My Six until the unique naming session
Yeah.
in strategic coach, right? Which you're teaching now. And I just got that bug. You got that bug too. I know it, right? You just realize, number one, I don't want to work for other people anymore. And we all have what Dan just figured out so elegantly. We all just want freedom. We don't like being told who to hang out with, how much money we can make, what our purpose should be. Um, Time, freedom, or time, money, relationships, purpose, right? Um, I didn't know that that's what I wanted, but that's what I wanted. I wanted that
Yeah.
freedom. And so I started my firm in 2012 and it grew very fast, arguably too fast at different times of that journey, and then I merged it with another law firm in 2021. And it has been a really fun and harrowing and sometimes traumatizing journey, but it's the best. It's the best journey you could be on. The journey of an entrepreneur is, as you know, Ben, it is, man, it's creative and it's liberating. It's free. It's just, um, I love every aspect of it, even the parts that don't seem fun when I'm going through them. And I'm guessing that's true for you too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you start having conversations with people who are not in the entrepreneurial world. They see fear and uncertainty, and it's so interesting that like either it's a self defense mechanism that I've developed over time, or it's just who I am because I just see opportunity. It just fear and uncertainty just smell, look, and taste like opportunity.
I noticed that about you, Ben. I think that you and I are kindred spirits because your default mode is positivity.
Yeah, that's true.
You see that silver lining. I think from talking to you, it I interpret it as this is Ben's, you know, automatic, and the fear and the insecurity and the anxiety. You've just got it kind of cauterized. You've got it, that's kind of an afterthought for you. And that's what I try to cultivate. I think I'm right about that about you, Ben, right?
Yeah, I think you are. And I was having this conversation with Jenna yesterday that my ability to quickly go to seeing the silver lining in it, I think sometimes can be misconstrued as that I don't see or feel the fear and uncertainty. But I remember distinctly starting to have some of these awarenesses that you would see people get caught in the fear and uncertainty trap of just and then would lead them to paralysis and I just remember thinking that like and again I want to be clear as I say this that all the feelings like matter and fear and uncertainty like those are all like real feelings, but I started thinking about that they were being mishandled resources. And I think that's the thing that I started looking at in my own life when I would have things. I've had many things. I've gone through divorce, and with that, all the things that come with that, and starting a new business, starting a new relationship, starting a new relationship then with the person who becomes your business partner, and all the things that go with that, growing your team, feeling a lot of fear and uncertainty. And every time I've really looked at the fear and uncertainty, I started to look at that there's an opposite side of that coin. It's like Newton's law, right? There's equal and opposite reactions. If there's fear and uncertainty, then there must be clarity and confidence on the other side of that. And I think that, but I think you're right on. I think the people that know me, sometimes annoyingly, they might say, is that I'm quick to go, well, what's the win in this?
Yeah. Wait, Ben, so I have a question for you. So how does that fear and uncertainty, um, like arise or come up for you inside, right? So there's a challenging problem you're dealing with either personally or professionally. Is it something that you notice is there, or is it something that is like just kind of like a distant echo and it's you don't even feel it? Like how does fear and uncertainty show up for you?
That's a really great question, Alex. I think in my unhealthy moments, I can feel the fear and uncertainty probably come up as like a quick flash fire anger, that I can feel like, and maybe anger is too strong a word, but like maybe a an intense frustration. Um, and then it's usually quickly, it's like it gets puffed out because I'm like, okay, I have the emotion. And that's probably my unhealthy self. Oftentimes I'm running it through this filter of what really is the truth and the end in mind in this. Like, what is the win that we're looking for? Whether it's actual person that we're dealing with in one of our organizations, or there's a perceived problem or issue. I find that oftentimes I find a level of calmness and clarity as oftentimes when people are bringing that to me.
I got a follow-up question for you. Um, because I'm so curious about this. Um, your when it shows up, how is your pause muscle, right? Like does it is there that moment where you're like, oh, fear and anger and insecurity are here, or does it like come out and you've got to go back and apologize to whoever you just were talking to? Like, how does that manifest for you typically?
Well, it'd be interesting conversation to ask my inner circle here. I will tell you that probably my inner circle, where I feel that I can truly, you know, I think really let my hair down. It probably comes out more like just a poof. And I'm very much an external thinker. You know, it's people, other people journal, which I think is amazing. I mean, the ability to write and journal and just be able to get it out, I think is amazing. But for me, I'm very much an external uh, thinker, and so, but I would say that majority of the time, um, I would actually say it's probably more rare for that to happen than it is like the norm. But oftentimes when there's a problem that comes to me and I sense someone else's either like frustration and honestly, maybe even almost senses of shame of like, hey, there's this problem, um, is that it's really interesting. I find myself going to this place of empathy. And I realize that any sort of emotion that I add to this is not going to help the matter. And it's weird. I think it's almost at this point, oftentimes subconscious. Where I had a friend talk to me about uh, he had called me and said, "Hey, you know what? Like my largest customer is this next year is let me know that maybe next year and the year after that I'm going to have a 40% reduction in what they're going to pay me for the next 2 years." And it was so interesting that literally in the moment that I heard him say that, I was just distinctly aware that I went, this are the words that went into my head. I went, "What a blessing." Like, where that came from, I have no idea, but it was very much, I was like, "What a blessing." And, you know, and as you and I have talked about, you know, with, my story with my son, you know, I never looked at what happened as a poor me. I mean, there are times where I would go through and have the internal conversation, you know, "I wish this was different." And the part that was the grief was the unwritten future, the unwritten possibilities. That was the part that, like, grieved me the most, but, I remember catalyzing it to a place of remembering just going, "How amazing that I get to have this experience with my family, with my wife," and, there was a lot of beautiful moments that even the times that, like, my heart wanted to break.
Is that a learned thing? Did you have to get to that point? Did you have to learn how to get to the place where you're saying, how is this a blessing? Or this, or just affirmatively saying, this is a blessing? Number one. And number two is, Do you have any awareness of like what your body is doing during those emotional highs and lows, or really the emotional lows, right? Like, does it show up in your chest or neck or face or whatever? I'm always curious about people's ability to detect their emotions in their body.
I'll start the question with the second part first. I feel it. Yeah, I'm very distinctly aware the where the lows, and I feel them in my chest. I feel them in my heart, um, and especially the low. When I say like the low lows, the low lows are the ones that are truly like felt to like my deepest core. I'm very aware of that. It comes in my chest, my heart. It is very much there. And in my high highs, it's where I call like where you have Dan Martell calls them these in the pocket moments. It's the time where you realize where you're having this moment, and I call those moments this where you're tapping into joy, where you can just it's this thing that we constantly want to come back to is that where you're so present. I feel that in my chest and my whole body. It just everything swells. But going back to the first portion of, I mean, there's a lot of unpacking in this, but my guess is it is learned. And the first thought that hopped into my head is, I was listening to a conversation my sister was having. I think this earlier this week, and we were talking about vulnerability and again, she has such a better recollection of like our childhood, like when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. And during that time frame, she was talking about how when we were younger, that when we'd have like these really like strong feelings as as toddlers and children are prone to do, that we would have my parents would have us sit down on this specific couch, and the purpose of that was actually to get it all out there. And then what we would do is that they had at least what I remember her talking about in this story is that they had a garbage can next to the couch that we would literally like make believe being like, well, whatever that was, we would put in our hand, and then when we were done with it and we were ready to be done with it, we would throw it away. And I think that those things echo, so much in our lives, and I'm so grateful for my parents for having those, like those little simple things that, at the time, I'm sure that both my sister and I were like, this is sort of ridiculous. Like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to share these feelings. And I'm curious, Alex, for you, uh, if you had this growing up, is that I remember always feeling a little bit out of place uh, growing up, and the fact that like had a lot of friends, but never really truly feeling connected or understood, or just. And I think now that I realize being seen, heard, and understood for like who I was meant to be, and I have a suspicion that a lot of my ability to catalyze that fear and uncertainty, and maybe some of like those negative feelings, was my coping mechanism of not feeling like I belonged.
Same. Yeah. Very similar experience. And so I think I shared with you my core values, and one of them is authenticity. And you be authentic. And for me, that comes from years and years of the opposite, of just uh, wanting friends and wanting to fit in. Over, I don't know, this was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. I went on a retreat. One of the ahas that came out of that retreat for me was the realization that a lot of my thoughts when I'm interacting with someone are about making sure that they like me and giving them what they want. And I realized that that has made me really good at sales and good at persuading juries and talking to employees. But when unchecked and when you're not aware of it, it's a recipe for inauthentic mindset and behavior and not having good boundaries.
Can you give an example of that? Like what the authentic version of you would do XYZ, and the inauthentic version of you would do what?
So I'm in the season of my life right now where I'm writing. I have a blog. It's called Dispatch from the Bright Side. It's on Substack. And um, the things I'm sharing in it about myself, about my journey, about some of the things we're talking about here, there is a rawness and a vulnerability to it that 7, 8, 10 years ago was just never going to happen. I would never do that. I would never share the way I'm sharing now. And it is because I'm now putting a really high value on sharing things that I think need to come out and will be helpful. And, there's just this creative energy that we have and that we're born with. I posted this just this morning, I think, on LinkedIn, and everyone is born with it. We came out of our moms with this energy that is, I don't know, 300,000 years old, that of evolution. And we are born creators. We were born to play. We were born to express. We were born to build. I'm tapping into that when I write these blogs in a way that just puts such a smile on my face, Ben. Um, and sometimes I get crickets, and that's fine. And that actually is empowering too, is I actually don't care, if anyone puts a like on this or not. I love the act of expressing what is inside of me in my own words without worrying about whether it's going to land and whether it's going to expose me and whether people will like me after they read it. There is just something so liberating about saying what's on your mind. I mean, not in an obnoxious way, obviously, right? But saying it in a relatively unfiltered way where it checks all the other core value boxes for me. That's the best example I can give to your question. It is listening to your inner voice and answering. And that inner voice is 300,000 years old, and longer. It's billions of years old when, you look at the events that led up to humans, right? We're all born with that energy and it needs to express.
Well, I love that. I am becoming more and more convinced that this is all an energy game, and that there's these frequencies, and frequencies are actually just echoes. And we don't necessarily know where that echo comes from. I'm curious, what are the other core values that you have? You just mentioned that this fills all the core values, and then the following question to that is, there was Alex before you understood what these core values were, and then there's Alex after these core values. And I think it's really important that, sometimes I think when people can hear these conversations, they're like, whoa, this is too frou-frou-y, right? This is a little like kind of too ethereal. But I would love to understand that when you started understanding, articulating, and then committing to them, what successes have happened as a result of that?
Great question. So first of all, everyone has core values. Whether you call them that, whether you recognize them as that, or label them, or say them out loud, every human walking on this planet has the things in their life that they value the most. Those are their core values. And if you're not sure what your core values are, you should look at your calendar from the last year, because that is the best barometer. That's the best almanac of your values, right? How have you spent your time? And if you go back far enough, you'll see patterns. And then there are the values that you want, the aspirational ones. And then the question is, are you living them or not? Because if you are, then they are your core values, I believe, anyway. And if they're not, then that's all they are, is their aspiration. But we all kind of move the needle a little bit towards whatever the true north is for us. So I believe strongly, strongly in going through whatever process you need to go through to identify them, excavate them, label them, evaluate yourself against them and then live by them. Right. And you can't do the last one until I believe, until you've done the first. Mine, and this took, so here, this is how I got, well, so I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll tell you how I got there, and then I'll tell you how I try to live them and what the result has been. Um, and if I go on too long, Ben, you got to kick me under the digital table here and tell me to shut up or break it up. I'll try to be somewhat concise. Okay, so I am a verbal processor, the way you described it too, but I do journal um, like religiously every single day, and I have since I was in Iraq in 2003, and that's when I started journaling, and I've never stopped. There was just something about um, this moment that I was in, and I was like, I better start journaling because I need to remember a lot of it. Okay. So that was in 2003, and I've journaled almost every day ever since. And a few years ago, I just started going back more deliberately to read my journals. And I kept seeing the same themes coming up over and over and over again. And it was like my subconscious talking to me. And the themes were love, express it, receive it, give it, share it, see it, use love as a filter. Love just kept coming up. The second was, so the label I gave to that value was walk in love. So one of my core values is walk in love. Another one was presence. I've got you. It sounds like you do too. Just psychotic ADHD, right? Just, I mean, I don't know. I sometimes wonder how I get out of, from out of bed to, you know, starting my day, because it is just rampant.
Takes a tribe.
It takes a tribe. Thank you. 100%. So, uh, being present, attempting, constantly striving to be in the moment instead of in the future or in the past has always been important to me. Meditation practice, mindfulness practice, um, gratitude. So that core value I label be here now, not somewhere else, and not some time, some other time, but here now. My third core value is authenticity, which we just talked about, um, for the reasons I've already mentioned. And so the phrase that I give that is you be you. And then my fourth core value is um, trust that the universe knows what it's doing. There's way more going on than you will ever comprehend or even have the ability to comprehend. And it's been going on for billions of years. And so just trust that what's going to happen in your life has some amount of things to do with you, but mostly it is the universe and the energy in it and the processes of the universe playing themselves out the way, I mean, it's just so much smarter than us, right? So I call that one the way knows the way. So those are my four core values. I write about them, journal about them, talk about them, give talks about them. I give a talk called A Checklist for Everyday Magic. And it is just those core values and how to actualize them if they're important to you. And so, and then I guess the last part of so I try to remind myself of them through work, through play, through relationships. And I try to, oh, man, I actually, I created a thinking tool around it and I sent it to Stephanie at Coach. And the thinking tool is, so you know how we measure a lot against our four freedoms, right? And if you are the concept is if you're not measuring against your core values, then you're leaving a lot on the table, a ton.
So much.
The disparity between where you are and where your core values are is um that's the integrity gap. You're living out of your integrity if you have core values, but you're not living according to them. And that gap in integrity is an energy drain.
Hmm.
You know, if you're saying things that you don't believe, if you are um, being a bad example to your kids or to your employees relative to how you think you should be, if you're a hypocrite, number one, it's a giant energy drain. Number two, you're not being authentic. And number three, it's such an opportunity to align. Ben, it's been a real journey to go through that process for me, identifying them, trying to live according to them, trying to share them and help improve people's lives. I guess I would say that since really intentionally walking down that road, my life has been exponentially better because I have, you never really get there, but you're there now. More presence and more authenticity and more trust and more love. I mean, when I have those four things, um, it is just it's joy without conditions. It's unconditional joy in life. In my life for me.
What a flow state.
Oof. Ben, what have you ever done anything similar? Have you ever like excavated core values and worked with them?
Yeah, and it's still it is still a deep work in progress. I think it first started for me on the entrepreneurial side of just needing some like core words to like hang on to, and that was build, coach, create, inspire, learn, were like these ideals, if you want to say, that I wanted to do. And um, I've been recently over the last couple of years diving into all these things that are my identities, and it all came from the book Atomic Habit, where it says, if you can identify it, and then you ask the next following question, what would the best version of that be? And I remember thinking, I mean, this is all like in these like building habits and skills. And I started thinking about what happens if you ask that question with all the hats that we wear, because I'm not just right now, I'm wearing the hat as a podcast host, right? But outside of that, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a sibling. I'm a child. I am a friend. I am a confidant. I am, a husband, a father, lover, right? All of those different identities, and really trying to narrow down. And I love what you were just saying there is that there's all these opportunities, and it's crazy when you think about showing up authentically yourself. It should be so easy to do, and what I'm finding is it takes an immense amount of discipline, which I call intentionally built structure, which going back to saying, hey, look at your calendar. I mean, your calendar is a reflection of that intentionally built structure and these core values. And I'm still pretty deep in it. It's actually one of the things that before our daughter is born, that Jen and I wanted to each go through our own core values and then combine them for what our family's core values, so that we have something to anchor back to as a family. What does it mean? What do we feel it means? And to be able to drive a lot of conversation with our kids in rather than an accidental way, in an intentional way.
I love what you just said, because it is so true that we grow into roles, we grow into identities. And when you're younger or early in your career, or just lacking in that curiosity and discovery motivation, it's very unconscious. You wake up one morning and you're like, oh, okay, this is the role I've created for myself and that other people have created for me, but it's actually not what I want. Or or um, you can create some even other distance in the sense that It is what I want. And, but, but am I aware that I'm being intentional about it? And do I even need to like, so playing with identity and role is huge. It's really important.
Yeah, and not only that, but I think that the speed that we sometimes have to switch them is almost dizzying. Having had my first child, my daughter, when I was 26, and then having my second child when I was 39, it gave me a really great juxtaposition to understand like this dichotomy between these two versions of Ben as a father, and 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 it gave me a lot of empathy for myself, and it gave me a lot more empathy of people who are, as you said, becoming these identities. And oftentimes, overnight, it's just going like, well, of course, you're your father, and there's some instinctual things. There's things that are nurtured from you, from what your own. But then there's all of the wounds that you bring along with you as your childhood that maybe subconsciously or consciously come out. And I'm distinctly aware of that. I am a significantly more authentic version of the father that I wanted to be at 39, and then at 41 into 42, and now soon to be 43, than I was at 26. And but there's something almost beautiful about that, Alex, isn't there? I think sometimes people want to be there. Like they want to be that version. But I think the thing that I'm realizing, and I think that's maybe also going back to your other question about like this alchemizing fear and uncertainty into like this beautiful outcome. I think that I realized that you have to be under tension. I mean, the greatest things in life, you think about diamonds, right? They only happen because they were under pressure and under tension. And, and I think that I'm curious with you, right, in terms of where you were at in your journey. And I think it could be really easy to look back and go, well, I wish I would have been this sooner. Did you struggle with that at all?
Yeah, 100%. I still struggle with it sometimes. But one of a part of love as a core value is loving yourself, and um not just saying I love myself, but like being good to yourself and being really, really accepting, you know, of of everything, and being actually like, back to Jessica Horvath, she used to say, shame is the stickiest of all emotions. Yeah, it's the stickiest. It's the one that what like when you have it, it's hard to get rid of. It stays forever. Um, but the opposite of shame is acceptance. And if you want to get like gangster with acceptance, it's actually being proud of those things happening, of the things you used to be ashamed of. Saying that is who I am. Um, I did that thing that was just, career suicide. I did that thing that destroyed a relationship. I did whatever. I got wasted that one day, and fill in the blank, right? I actually could fill up this podcast with those. Um, but yeah, so I mean, so like being truly appreciative of every part of your life's journey, and knowing that every one of those was necessary to becoming the person that you are today is it's a not only a key element of love, but I would argue that it is, you can't love other people as fully as you can when you appreciate yourself first. And the other thing I'll say about it, Ben, too, is, I may have said this to you once before, or in a room with you once before, but um, you know how people say, talk to yourself the way you would talk to your friend, right? Or They, be careful when you beat yourself up. So everyone says that, and everyone knows it, and everyone knows that that is the opposite of self-love. But it is way more subtle than that. It was way more nuanced than that. I don't I don't call myself an idiot in my head. Um, and I think that my inner monologue is the way that I would talk to a friend. I think it is. But the subtle part of not loving yourself is when you are um, constantly striving for something better. And when you don't get there, you have this little whisper. It's not saying you're an idiot. It's not saying that you're um you it's saying you could do better, right? It's saying it really quietly. And it's you got to but when it's there, and that's what Dan calls living in the gap, right? But that is antithetical to self-love, right? It's fine to say I'll do better next time. It's fine to say I'm gonna dust myself off and get up and take another swing. Those are okay. But when that whisper, when that weight is kind of like sitting on your shoulders and that whisper is in your ears and it's always there and it's like this low level striving that never goes away, that's not self-love. That's not self-love, you know? So so part of that for me is recognizing that that striving voice is there and might not be helpful all the time.
Yeah, I find that striving oftentimes for me manifests in when I'm feeling um, unsatisfied, and I'm feeling and that unsatisfied makes me feeling unhappy, and it is such a potent elixir that can really just honestly, I mean, if unchecked, can blow up. I mean, it can blow up relationships, it can blow up businesses, it can blow up your basically your desire to live core value centered. I mean, it is so potent.
It's so potent. Um, were you there when
Mm.
Chad Johnson said to everyone in the room, he goes, he was telling a personal story, and he said, "Man, I realize how much of a gift it is that I can be here with you right now, that I could go and travel when I want to travel. And I've created this space for myself financially. I'm just always living in a state of gratitude for it. I'm just, and that really resonates. Do you remember that at all? Or like,
I do.
yeah. And um, that is self love, right? It is recognizing that you have at any given point, at any given time, these qualities and capabilities and freedoms, and viewing them as gifts, right? And knowing that I don't know, most people on the planet don't have that kind of freedom.
Amen.
That's self love.
It's so interesting that in so many circles, you know, you talk about this word love, and let's just face it, any of these type of emotions, and it seems to me that more and more the when you are talking to people who have risen above, right? And I look at risen above as just they have their marine layer has lifted, and people are like, oh, whoa, oh, wow, okay, that's amazing, right? They get to see the greatest overnight 20-year success, right? And they're like, whoa, wow. But I'm finding that more and more I have conversations with people who are being recognized. It wasn't just that they had a great idea, right? It was that they were able to like bring it to the forefront and get people to go along with it. And one of the key underlying characteristics I'm finding is that there's this level of emotional intelligence. Not always, just to be clear, but there's a level of emotional intelligence. And why do you feel that that is something that is not taught, right? Because I think that, yeah, like you said, we come out of the womb and we have all these things, but they're not. They oftentimes they're not cultivated. Why is emotional intelligence the thing that seems to be like there? You go to grade school, high school, college, maybe graduate school, and then maybe you go on to an even a deeper school, right? A fellowship. But it seems like you have to get to the fellowship of life for you to realize, whoa, hold on, this thing called emotional intelligence. Someone forgot. Someone forgot to put it in the manual, right?
You're so right about that. It is such a uh, it's an unlock, right? For to life.
It's like a cheat code.
Yeah, but and it is a trait that you will use for the rest of your life or abuse for the rest of your life. And we you're so right. We learn a little bit like in kindergarten, right? And preschool, where they teach you how to manage emotions. Um, and it's mostly like tantrum related and sharing.
Yes.
And then the assumption is your parents will teach you the rest. And then we're going to shift right into math, science, history, English, right? Let's go dissect some stuff. And it is totally ignored. And yet that is the one skill that if all of us, if all of us did better at that, it would, um, it would be like the earth on its axis pivoting. It would be that um, impactful on the direction of this country, families. Um, we are social animals first and foremost. We are animals first and foremost. We are social animals, and that's how we build stuff and get stuff done. And part of that is our emotions. We are emotional animals, and most of us don't regulate. Most of us don't regulate our emotions as well as we could. I'll say that. Um, so Ben, yeah, I like you would think that that would be the curriculum. Now, if you want to, here's my cynical answer to that question. Okay. Um, yeah, my cynical, but I think realistic answer to that question is getting in. Well, I'll just talk about today. I think that there historically it was more about like, hey, math and science are just more important because we need to grow the country economically and beat the Soviet Union. And there's no place for emotional intelligence then, and it wasn't even a thing in the until like the last 30 years, right? Um, Today, getting parents to agree on what emotional intelligence is and whether the school should be teaching it. Good luck, right? Good luck. You it seems so obvious to you and me, but we are just I can already see the apoplectic moms and dads saying, "Wait, you're teaching my kid what? Feelings in fifth grade?" Pulling my kid out of that school.
I will say that for me, when I look at my own entrepreneurial journey, where I really took off, where I can actually see the cause and effect, is that I feel that the understanding and excavating that needed to happen so that I could see the sunrise on my own truth taught me a whole lot of skills that actually allowed me to be more creative. It actually allowed me to look at problems differently. And actually, I think that's maybe going back to this underlying thing that I don't see problems, is that I see opportunities. And I think that a lot of that has come from this lifelong quest of excavating and the continued excavating. And I intrinsically believe that the most beautiful version of you already exists. And it actually, you need to stop going there because it's already here. And that this excavation, and I will say that the more I double down, triple down, quadruple down on the excavation, of who I am and who I'm becoming and who I want to be, which I think is the emotional intelligence journey. I have found that the balance sheet has followed, the relationships have followed, the where I get to spend time and what I get to spend time in has followed, and the more that I'm living in that purpose, the more these moments of joy start to become repeatable instead of just kind of intermittent. And it's so interesting. It doesn't necessarily fall into the lines of maybe these Alex Hormozis of like, you wake up, you work, when you're done working, you go to bed, and then rinse and repeat. And I'm curious, have you found that to be true for you as well when you think about your own balance sheet of what others might actually measure as success?
You know, I'd be curious about this question for you too, Ben. My life really tends to go in seasons, and there are seasons of high discipline and seasons of low discipline, and there are seasons of high presence and seasons where I'm just like, just working too much and not paying attention. But then there are seasons of awareness, and that's really where my head goes in response to your question. Um, the balance sheet is I'm either so right now I believe that I'm in a season of my life where my balance sheet is my balance sheet. And I know that it is not the same as what other people's balance sheets are for themselves or for me. My balance sheet now is the four core values that I live my life by. And if all of my money and my companies and my security all got taken away today, I think that I would not be devastated so long as I wake up in the morning and I go to bed at night. And in between those two endpoints, I have lived my core values the entire time.
The thing that I love about you, and I think that, there's levels of people going, look at the success. They can look at the planes. They can look at all the different things that might denominate success. And I think one of the things that I've always been impressed with you and why I was really excited to have you on is that I didn't necessarily know these core values that you talked about, but I got to just tell you, um, man, it is really neat to see someone who embodies like what they say and what they do. And I just got to tell you, um, and the audience here, if you get ever a chance to interact with Alex or I mean, quite frankly, you and we've done a little bit of business together, and I got to tell you, it shows. It absolutely shows in who you are personally and what I've been able to see of you professionally. And I just think I think that is so incredible.
Dude, you have no idea how much that means to me, Ben. I really appreciate hearing it in general, but I very much appreciate hearing it from you. Your if I'm remembering that first day correctly, there is definitely whether it's part of your unique ability or one of your core values, but it is definitely inspiring other people, if I'm remembering it correctly. And dude, you're inspiration. You really are. I mean, even just now, just connecting over the last, I don't know, however long it's been, hour or so. Um, really, I mean, and I'm not saying that to blow smoke. I mean, you're an inspiring person. So thanks for inspiring.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, and it means a lot coming from you. Alex, if people want to find more about you, they want to either read your blog, they want to read your book, they want to just be connected with someone who is on this emotional health and emotional intelligence journey. Not only that, but to follow that, but also wanting to find out, hey, how can they actually do business with someone who is this connected? Where can they find you?
Okay, so I have a blog. It's called Dispatch from the Bright Side. If you just, it's on Substacks and you can subscribe to it. And I talk about, I mean, the last hour of conversation really covers. I expand on that there, and I do a lot of speaking about it, which I really enjoy, and which I think people get a lot of value from. Um, my law firm is Gertsburg Licata. My other company is called Cover My Six, and um, just Google, or do people still use Google? Perplexity, either of those. Um, yeah, we've got a book. It's a really fun book. It's called The Lawsuit Free Company.
That's compelling.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, and that really is Cover My Six and The Lawsuit Free Company. It's really interesting, Ben. Um, they are a very logical solution, but there's even that, and I know this is true for your wealth management practice too, and definitely your coaching. You you are a who that solves problems and makes other people's lives better. And one way that I know how to solve problems is by helping companies and entrepreneurs stay out of court. Because 24 years of doing this, what I know is that once they're in court, once they're getting sued, they can't, they, they're not thinking about other things. They're not present. They're spending stupid amounts of money on lawyers and eventually a settlement, tons of time in conference rooms, at their lawyer's office, in um, depositions and witness preparation and document reviews and trial maybe. And it's all such a distraction and such an energy drain. And so, um, being able to help people in that way, I would so much rather help someone avoid a courtroom than get them out of the jam once they're in it. Because once they're in it, extracting them from that problem, it's going to happen, but you got to go through it, and it sucks. And um, and you solve one problem when that happens. But Cover My Six is about building this like six-sided fort around the business, based on the fact that there's only six plaintiffs who can sue your business: customers, vendors, employees, shareholders, the government, competitors. And so we, so the logic is there and it works, but the ability to give someone peace of mind and to know that I have just helped them avoid this giant ass ache of a problem, right? For that is gratifying. That is really important. And so I love doing that too. Anyway, that tying the business into everything else we've been talking about, freedom.
No, I love it. Well, what you're really trying to do is allow entrepreneurs to stay in that healthy emotional intelligence so that they can be creative, so they can solve other people's problems and let the good times roll, right?
Yep.
And lastly, if they want to find you on LinkedIn, what do you wonder?
I'm pretty sure it's Alex Gertsburg. I think it's like whatever the backslash is, and then Alex Gertsburg.
Well, Alex, I'd like to give our guests the last word, but before I do that, hey, I want to thank you for coming on here. Thanks for just sharing so freely and so vulnerably. I love it, and it's been. I knew it was gonna be a good conversation, but it landed even better than I expected. And so, thank you for coming on. And I'm gonna. What's the last word? What's the last word, my friend?
So first of all, Ben, I forgot that we were even doing a podcast. I just love talking to you, man. I really do. I mean, it was just I knew it was going to be a fun conversation too, and so thank you for talking with me for the last hour. Because you know, yeah. Um, last word. I think my last words are just love yourself. And from that well springs all the joy. And you can share that love and you can grow from it. Um, so start there, start with where you are, and just love on yourself with everything you've got, you know? Because you're a pure, energetic, authentic human being inside there somewhere with all of the accoutrements that come with being a human being, right?
Yes.
So just love on that, because it's a lucky thing to be a human. It's a real fortunate thing, no matter where you are.
I love that, Alex. I love that. What a great last word. And again, thanks for being on the pod. And until we see you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.